Then I actually got into cemetery sales. So I started selling grave plots. I was selling headstones, grave plots.
That's a consistent business.
Yeah, and they're dying to get in, right?
Hey gang, welcome back to the Replace Your University podcast. I'm your host as always, Michael Lush, and I've got sitting with me a good friend of mine, Michael McGovern. Michael McGovern goes by the Reckless CEO on Instagram, owns a very successful roofing company, so I've got the pleasure of talking with him today, and he's going to share some business inside secrets for you guys today. Thanks for being with us today, Michael. Thanks for coming into town. You're originally from West Virginia, and I played basketball in North Carolina, but we also played a lot in West Virginia, and I will say I've never been there and actually seen the sun.
Yeah, man, it's pretty gloomy, right? And then I didn't do much of an upgrade when I went to Ohio.
Yeah.
It's not that much different. So, I come to Nashville and I wonder why I stay there.
So the reason why I wanted Michael to come on is Michael's got a different spin of anybody that I've met in the contracting business, or the construction business, renovation business. He owns a very successful roofing company, but he attacks it a lot differently than I've got another buddy that I was just on the phone with that I was wanting to introduce you to. You attack business a lot differently than most do. Where does that come from? I mean, and I must say, I'm 44 years old. He's 30. So I wish I was where he is at the age of 30. So congratulations, by the way.
Appreciate
But where does that come from? Because you attack it in a very analytical way, very methodical way, which is, it shows via the performance of the business.
Yeah. I'd have to say probably one of the number one things would be our mutual friend, Ryan.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't hurt that he's been my mentor now for about 2 years. I can connect, just get me in the room and I feel like I can have an opportunity. And so, it started from there and went from the, sales there, and then I actually got into cemetery sales. So I started selling grave plots. I was selling headstones, grave plots.
That's a consistent business.
Yeah, they're dying to get in. And they're dying to get in, right? And man, it was such a, it really taught me empathy. Right. And I think when you're guys like us that are masculine, kind of alpha type A, when you can learn empathy and be empathetic towards people and be able to see things from different perspectives, it gives you an edge in business.
Yeah, 100%.
And so going through that, I went from, as a starting sales guy there to end up running 5 locations from Dayton to Columbus and, scaled out relatively quickly. And it was about 2 years into that job, someone said, hey man, would you be interested if I could help you, get into real estate with no money? So it's the wholesaling avenue, right? And it's oh, well, that sounds awesome, right?
Yeah.
To me, I watched, my uncle and my dad, get into investing, and it didn't they didn't have it as a full-time thing. It was always on the side. So I thought you needed all this money and you needed all these things to get into it. And so when this guy kind of showed it to me, I start diving and learning, and really that was my first kind of step into mentorship, right? I found an online course, right? Paid 10 grand. I flew out to Arizona for a week and did an all-inclusive, learn how to build a wholesaling business. I came back and it was just pedal to the metal, right? I'm connected with agents, and I was still working my job. At lunch break, I'm going and looking at houses and just trying to learn and network. And so really the big thing was the wholesaling to start, but then, I won't get too deep in the weeds on it, but I ended up getting a house in contract, and it was the first one. I'm man, I know this is a good deal. I know this is the one. Unfortunately, nobody knew me.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had no network. No one knew what I was doing. So I'm trying to sell this house, and no one's budging.
Right.
And I get to 20 days. I ain't got no one to buy it yet. 15 days, no one to buy it. This guy thinks I'm closing on it. Right. He's under the understanding that I'm the one buying the property. I've never gone through this process before.
Yeah.
So I start calling friends, family. I end up raising $120,000 and closing on the house in 10 days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And quit my job.
Yeah.
I knew I raised enough money to fund the rehab, to fund the purchase of the house. And that was my step into it. I'm all right, well, I'm going to figure this thing out. I'm not a contractor, but I'll find people.
So the property initially was supposed to be wholesaled.
Yes.
But you ended up
Right. I feel like I had such a connection with the guy. Man, I can't go back and tell him I can't buy this house now. I just got to kind of find out what I got to do from here. And that was really kind of the snowball into everything else. And, I got into that. I was wholesaling full time, investing full time. I was flipping, doing this, just raising capital and kind of networking and going like that. And then that's when I met Ryan. Yeah. And, I had seen him through Instagram or Facebook, and I always consider myself somewhat of a squeaky wheel. Right. If I want something, you're going to hear from me until I get it. And found Ryan on there, and I reached out to him on social media. He didn't get back to me. I just kept reaching out to him, kept reaching out to him, right? And eventually he's like, well, what do you want? How can I help you? And I'm like, listen, man, I'm up in Columbus. I got no friends. I got no family. I got nothing, man. I'm trying to build this business. I see you on social media. You're a big dude. You're talking about psychedelics and just all of these things where it's just like I felt like I kind of connected with him. And, I'll never forget like that phone call, man. I was almost in tears by the end of the call. And he's like, man, like come and meet with me. Let's get coffee. We met, and from there, man, it not only started the mentorship, but the relationship that him and I have, created now. And so fortunately, I've just been around him so much that I think that through osmosis, not just through, I've applied a lot that he teaches. Yeah. Right. It's not like I'm just sitting there consuming it, not doing anything with it. Like I'm a big action taker. So it has helped me just expedite that learning process by being around him, and then being able to connect with guys like yourself. Right. He's opened that up for me too, to not just have to rely on my resources, right, man? Not to just rely on my resources, but to get me in front of people and allow me to, kind of expand as well. And so as I got into roofing, kind of how that started, the real estate was that's what I was doing. I'm doing that, and as I'm growing and I start raising more capital, and then I'm like, man, like I'm trying to take money from the business that you want to leave money in. Yeah. Right, and because real estate's a wealth business, right? It's the bucket. I need to fill that. I don't need to be taking the money from it. And so from there, I'm like, well, I'll start a construction company. So then I start Columbus Construction Company, and now I'm raising money from the investors, and then using the construction company to then rehab the deals. Yeah. So I'm making a little cut in between. Symbiotic, right? So I'm making just a little vertical integration, right? So I'm making the cut in between. And as that's growing and building, it's still not fast money though. Like construction, it's cash flow intensive, right? I mean, if you're doing a rehab on a house, it's 2 months, 3 months. Like it's not active and quick. And and as that's growing, Ryan's like, man, you need to start a roofing company, bro. And I'm like, I don't know nothing about roofs. I never even laid a shingle before. And he's like, yeah, but you love coaching people. And he's like, it's really a sales and marketing business when you look at it. And so from that point, I started learning it a little bit, studying this whole insurance process. And I had a friend that had a house, and I'm like, hey man, like roof was probably 15 years old. I'm like, hey, can I try out this insurance thing and see if I can get this? The guinea pig? Right. And I'm like, can you see if I can get this thing covered for you? Hope it doesn't leak. Literally, right? I'm like, I haven't really done, like I have the construction, so I know I got the guys to do it, but as far as the process with insurance, I hadn't really done it, And so, obviously we ended up getting it done, and it was like in February or March, right, of last year. And so that last season was our first season as the roofing company, and gets approved, and we do the roof. It took a day and a half or a day. And, I look at doing a bathroom remodel on a house, right? It's like, all right, it's a $30,000 remodel on a retail house. You're, in and out, getting around the homeowners, doing this. It's 1 week, 2 weeks probably. Like you got different trades coming in and out. And so I looked at that, and then the $30,000 roof took me 1 day. And my margin was 50% versus 20% as long as nothing went wrong. And I was like, well, wait a second. That's active income. Yeah. Right? And so as I did that, I sold a roof. Got that one. Then I sold another one, got that. And then basically stacked up, 6 figures. And then I was like, I'm going to hire somebody. And then just started like piecing it together from there. And then really for me, got to rely on the sales and marketing side and just building salespeople. Yeah.
So the overarching theme that I'm hearing so far is, one, you didn't come from a roofing background. Did you come from a construction background?
My parents did a little bit of it, but no.
It's like we just bought cattle, and my dad had cattle, my grandfather had cattle. Uncles have cattle, so you would think I would know something about it, but no, I was just a little kid that slap them around, tip them over,
milk them a little bit.
Yeah. But I don't know anything about cattle, so now I'm having to lean on them for advice, when I'm getting this cattle. But so you didn't have roofing experience, you didn't have construction experience. You might be handy, but when I hear your story, the overarching theme is there's a business there, but what your skill set is automation, the business systematics and makeup of it. You don't have to be a roofer. So there's lots of limiting beliefs out there that, well, I can't do that because I don't know how to be a roofer. You never laid a single shingle, but yet you have a successful roofing company. You probably didn't build a house, but yet you have a successful construction company. So it's just...
Well, and sometimes I think that it's honestly a benefit to know less about it. Right? Because when you know more about it, you get caught working in it versus on it. I knew that I wasn't resourceful enough I didn't know enough to do it. So I had to become as resourceful as possible if I wanted to make it work. And, one skill set of mine is, dude, I can get you fired up. Yeah. Like if I got you, we could run through that. I get you to run through that glass wall if I wanted you to. Right. And that's my skill set. Right. I have some good ideas with like systems and processes, but I'm terrible at implementing.
Right.
I'm a terrible integrator. Right. But I can build the vision. I can get people excited, and I got big ideas, man. I'm a true visionary through and through. Right. And that's what Ryan has really helped me to tap into is like, dude, just get in your genius. Get in your lane and fill the positions around you.
Yeah, they call it around the office that I'm the chasing butterflies guy.
Right. We had a meeting last week and it was with our whole leadership team and Ryan was like, dude, guys, listen, when Mike comes in here with an idea, don't listen to him. Right? Because we will have everybody dialed in. We're going one direction, and I go to sleep, and I wake up, and I've got all these ideas, and I come in. I'm like, we got this and this subscription service, and and all these things. And now everyone's like, they're panicking, right? Because they don't want to let me down, but they're also like, well, we're trying to do all of these things that we're supposed to do because we got deadlines to hit, and now you're throwing us way off.
So one thing that Ryan has kind of helped not only me but the entire business focus on is not the how. So I come up with the ideas and don't focus on how it's going to get done. Focus on the who.
Yep.
And that's what we do with a lot of our capital management is, all right, well, we know that this is a good idea and something that we should implement. Don't focus on how it's going to get done. Let's focus on who's going to do it. And that who is really going to determine the how.
Yes.
And if sometimes I would get I was a control freak where I was like, well, I want it done this way. And then when I would relinquish that control and allow somebody else to operate in their zone of genius, their how was way better than my how and far more efficient, on time, under budget. So focus on the who, not the how is the overarching theme there.
And like you said, getting into what you're good at and then helping, like I think the best leaders are able to help people see a version of themselves that they can't see yet.
Yeah.
Right. And because we're taught so many different things through life and what it's supposed to look like and how life is supposed to be and that you're supposed to hate your job and, you got to just go to work and you got to clock in and you got to do all these things. And I've realized that it's really not that at all. Right. I've been blessed to get around people that have allowed me to step into the areas that I'm best at. And so my biggest goal for every single person that works with me is like, I want it to be yours as well. And I want you to love to do it. Right. And so I make all my people sign or fill out like a delegate and elevate form. Right. So it's like, what do you want to do?
Well.
Right. You know what I mean?
The same mentor. Yeah.
Constantly. Right. And so it's like making them like see that and then re-sign it and go through it and just being like, this is what you need to be doing. And this is it. And that's okay. Stop doing all the other things. Because just like you, control freak or not, right? You want it to be a certain way, so you try to put your hands in it or change it, and you realize that people are way better at those things than you, and you have to allow them to be creative too, and let them feel like they can be creative.
Yeah, it was almost self-sabotage too, because I would take pride in the fact that I did so much that nobody could outwork me. I'll do that, and I'll do that. Oh, this needs to be done with the business. Fine, I'll do that.
Well, that's that blue collar mindset too.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's the way you come up.
But that pride, you've got to set it to the side because that's really what was stunning the growth of the business. Where what really propelled the business forward was me doing stuff like this or coming up with ideas and staying in that lane, allowing Matt and allowing Derek and Edmund now that you've met them. You see them. I mean, we've got so many different verticals now in the business that they are operating in their zone of genius, where prior to Derek, and I don't know if you knew this, but prior to him being in the seat that he's in, he was just a sales guy. Now he's a sales manager. Now he's operated all these funnels. And just quick lesson. So we went from $150 cost per lead to now our leads are less than $8 or $7.75. And he's only been in that seat for a couple months.
Yeah.
And we've hired, we were talking about this on our level 10 meeting. I'm sure y'all do level 10 meetings too. So we were talking about this on our level 10 meeting that we have now estimated that we have wasted $5 to $6 million in ad spend over the last several years by hiring people that were driving traffic that didn't know how to put together funnels. They didn't know it. This is what they do as a profession. They were coaches, people that we hire, mentors, marketing mentors, to put stuff together. Like, I can, scale your business and do all this, and they didn't do it. And then you take somebody that was in a sales position, put him in that seat, and that's his zone of genius, and he figures it out in 2 months, and we go from $150 leads to $7.75 per lead, and our CPA is so low now compared to what it used to be.
Right.
So just putting people in the right. Here's the thing, I'm also a big fan of if you're not performing right now in that seat, It doesn't mean I have to kick you off the bus. We just have to investigate and find out what are you really passionate about, and find out if you still need to be on the bus, and then what seat on that bus makes the most sense for what your skill set is.
Well, I think too, and just to touch on that as well is, because I'm the same way. I don't want to have to get rid of somebody if it's not a good fit, right? I want to be able to work with them. I want to be able to help them. Sometimes I become too emotional and too attached to my people, right?
Because you don't just see them; you see the wife, you see the kids.
100%, man, right? And so it's like I want to help them as well. And one thing that I've learned is that you can't create positions though, because I've also got stuck doing that where they don't fit here, so now I'm gonna make a position and put them here, and then that's not working out. And I'm making it, and like at the end of the day, you're also doing a disservice to the person too, because you have to have that radical candor with them, where it's best sometimes for both people to go different ways.
Yeah, right.
And it's just because at the end of the day, you're not doing either one of you a favor because you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings.
What would you say was the hardest either lesson or stumbling block to becoming an entrepreneur?
Man, I kind of just what we talked on, right? I think one of the biggest things for me is that I'm, I look at guys like Ryan and see some of the decisions he has to make, and I'm like, man, that guy's heartless.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that guy's he's calloused, right? But I have been burnt so many times that now I start to see that, right? And so it's learning to invest time, energy, and resources into people, but not to the extent that it starts to affect your personal life, right? Not to the extent that it starts to like wear you out and starts to affect your capacity because you're so worried about, investing your time into them, right? And or again, resources, right? I've been in positions where, as you're growing the company, I'm not taking pay because I'm making sure that people are getting paid. And then next thing you know, as soon as a different opportunity or a different situation happens, they're out the door and gone. Yeah. Right. And you have to understand that the business is the most important thing. Like the business is a living and breathing organism. And if it's not being fed and growing, it doesn't matter who works there. Nobody's going to have a job. So to me, it's understanding that you have to put the business first.
That's one of the biggest misconceptions about being an entrepreneur, owning a business, is people think, well, if I just build it to this level, then I can just coast and ride. There is no such thing. I used to have a business partner that was the same way. He was just happy with maintaining the status quo. Well, as soon as you get there, what do you think is happening to the business? It starts dying on the vine very quickly. You have to grow. You have to stay out in front of things. I mean, you look at our business, interest rates skyrocket through the roof. So what do? We adapt. We adapt. We come up with new strategies, and the new strategies are actually better than our old strategies. They make more sense now in this market than it did in any market. So you have to be innovative. You have to look at growth. And if you don't, you are eventually going to die on the vine.
Right, and I think that that kind of ties into what we were talking about at first, right, with our business and having a different approach to the construction industry, right? And for me, as I got into it and being able to look at it from a high level and saying, man, I see, coming from real estate, I see all the areas where I think that I could improve this roofing industry, right? Like I don't know a lot of guys doing a bunch of cold calling or SMS, and it's very, knocking doors. You got to be doing that. And I agree, that's a pulse, right? You have to have that, but there's so many things that have evolved in the marketing game that can allow business to grow so much faster. It's allowed us to grow exponentially, right? And I think that's one of the assets that I've been able to bring in is that I look at it with such a different lens because I have been exposed to all these other avenues where now I'm like, okay, well, versus, I want to have a roofing company in every state. That's awesome. And majority of these roofing companies that I know, that's what they think, right? Yeah. And I got to start one here and I'll be there and I want to tell everybody about it and we're going to be the first $100 million company and this and all of this stuff. Like, there's a lot of ego behind that and they want everyone to know about them and they want to be all present. And I think that's great. And we want to sell our company too. Yeah. But to me, it's how can I vertically integrate? Right? How can I have 5 locations in Ohio that's niche marketing in areas that I know I can get 3 to 5 million every single time on, being able to have a parent company that can arbitrage everything underneath of it, owning the software, having the infrastructure, having the people, have the continuity like we're talking about, be able to offer subscription models. Like there's so many things that you leave, you leave by just doing the roof. Right. It's like they get the roof and they're on to the next. It's be very transactional. And I'm like, well, how do we create the relationship that creates lifetime customer value? So not only are we getting paid right now, but when it's winter time and we're not doing roofs, we still have cash flow coming in. Yeah. And then that allows me to have salespeople that can now have revenue coming in consistently when they're not selling, right? If we sell a certain program or a subscription or, what we're down here talking about today, right? These are avenues that I can create for my people and the business that's going to allow it to expand 10x and make it so much more valuable and more controllable.
You're building the foundation.
Right, and it's just the data side of it is what you're focusing on, not being omnipresent outside of where you're at.
It's something to be said too about being lean and small. Right? There's a lot of business owners that get into it, like the mindset, well, let's go with every state, every location, get to 100+ million in revenue. And, I was just telling you a story of, I was trying to give you a connection down here in Tennessee, and I call him and he's like, yeah, man, I don't own that company anymore. We're one of the largest in Tennessee, grew to 20 million a year in revenue, and lumber prices went up and I lost $600,000 the year that we did the most revenue. Right? So a lot of business owners will pound their chest of, we did X amount in gross revenue. I got a former business partner. Like? That's all he ever does. He talks about how we made millions of dollars. The company generated millions of dollars. Us as owners, we did not make millions of dollars because there's gross revenue versus net profit.
Yes.
And a lot of times when you're going after massive revenue numbers, you do it at the detriment of net profit.
100%.
And
it gets sloppy.
It does.
Right. And I realize that too in the roofing space. Same thing, man. I'm hiring a project manager and I'm this and an operations guy and it's all these pieces because I think that's what you need.
Yeah.
Right. And because even with me and Ryan being partners in the roofing company, he didn't step in until this year.
Right.
So I ran our whole first year by myself. Right. So and he's very like, lets you learn yourself too. He's going to help you. He's going to guide you, but he's going to let me get bumped on the head too along the way. Right? There's been many times where we'd be sitting in the room. He's like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. I'm like, well, tell me next time, man. I don't want to have to make that mistake, right? He's like, but you need to learn, right? And so he let me hire people and do this and all these things. And then realizing that, man, I didn't really need that. I didn't need that person because, our default is that when we get into over our head and we get to, we're expanding and we think that we need to hire more people, not fix the back end or fix the system or the process or the automation. Like that should be the default, not to bring somebody else in because that's just slapping a Band-Aid on the, on the cut.
And you just increase your operating expense.
That's all you're doing.
Yeah. So where do you see yourself in 10 years?
I mean, I would.
You'll only be 40.
Right, I'll only be 40. Right, I know I'll be a millionaire. Right.
In 10 years, if I don't age, you would still be younger than me.
I mean, 10 years for me, man. I seriously, I love the game of business. Right, and so even the play with roofing, it's a 3 to 5 year play. Essentially, we want to, like I was telling you, franchise into Ohio, be able to bottle that up, sell the whole thing off to some private equities that we've been speaking with already. And then from there, like now I have the playbook. And I have the connections, right? In which Ryan has those connections as well, and the capital, right? And so to me, that's probably the first big move. I also have a media company as well, which I do that produces podcasts, and we have a kind of a brick and mortar spot. And I love the podcast game. This is some of my favorite stuff, the content stuff, right? And so, what we're offering there as well is now we're bringing people in and like packaging it up as like a subscription model, where you come in, you record in our office. We have our content guy that the second you step out of the car, he's recording you getting out of the car, coming into a pre-production meeting, like before you get the podcast.
Y'all taking notes?
A little pre-production meeting before the podcast starts, getting all those pictures and getting you in the podcast. We've got the cameras on it. Our guys still getting, solo content from there. Then we've got a content room they can go to in the back, and like we actually consult with them and help them like build their content out to speak to their avatars. And so,
what's the name of this? Because I can already tell that a lot of people would want to know.
JMG Media Group.
Okay.
Yep. And so we broke it down into 3 packages. One is like content only. You come in and you record, but you don't you basically get the raw content. We give it to you.
Yeah.
Second stage is you can use the podcast and you can record on the podcast, you get the content from us as well, and then we give you that raw content, we give it to you. The third package would be the consulting piece, and we will automate, master, and syndicate your podcast. Like we run Ryan's podcast. Right? So we'll put it out on 22 platforms for you as well, and then all of your content will be edited. So we've got a content guy in-house, and we have an editor in-house as well. Because what I realized that is at scale, trying to build my brand out, that once I was hiring all these people for marketing, and at scale, the content really became convoluted and like unimpactful, and it wasn't the mission anymore, right? And to me, the people I'm not doing this just to do it and to be famous. I'm doing it because I truly want to help people and impact people.
Yeah.
And so when I give somebody my content and then they just send it back with subtitle, with captions, and it looks cool for Instagram, like that's awesome. But now it's irrelevant to me because it's not speaking to the people.
Pornhub subtitles.
Pornhub subtitles, right? And so like that's the media space. Like I really love that, and media is exponential, right? Service industry. You can only go so big, right? Or go so far with it. Media is exponential, coaching exponential, right? So it's being able to get something in that space going. So I mean, that's a big play too. So 3 to 5 years, I think the roofing company, sell that, having the media thing growing as I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And another thing that I'm creating in the roofing side is, I want all of my guys to like build their brand too.
Right.
So all of my sales guys, they're starting their own podcasts where I'm producing them and doing that for them, like helping them build their brands.
That's
because
awesome.
Right, because if I can have each 10 of my sales guys to have 5,000 to 10,000 followers, well,
Yeah.
right, and that keeps them tied into wanting to stay with you, because in the service industry, like a roof, once they figure it out, they can go get contractors, they can go get connections, and they can go sell. They don't need me.
So I'm hearing leverage a lot. So
A lot of leverage.
when it came to the media side, did you acquire the property, or already have the property, and say, I want to do a podcast to kind of promote my business, and then was the media business kind of born out of that?
So it was funny. I was connected to the guy through my pastor, because the guy that owned the property already had sold a construction company back in 2019. And my pastor was like, dude, I recorded a podcast with this guy. You got to meet him. He sold a construction company.
Yeah.
He's like you, right?
Yeah.
He's like, you need to connect with him. So I went and connected with him. No different than Ryan, right? Kind of same thing. I kept coming around the guy. You sold a construction company. Tell me about it. What'd you do? What did it look like? Just trying to learn from him. And he already had this studio, and he had the podcast in it already. And so as our relationship, continued to grow, he was like, would you ever look into starting a podcast? And I was like, well, I have this concept of this, like the Reckless CEO.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, that's an awesome name.
It is.
And to me, it's me, right? It's like this guy that's kind of throwing shit at the wall and seeing what's stick. And I've found some success. I've had a lot of losses, but I've had lessons too. And it's like continued to upward improve.
Yeah.
Right. And so to me, that's kind of what the Reckless CEO was. So once I kind of pitched that to him, he's like, dude, that's an awesome idea. Started the podcast, ended up investing into that company.
Yeah.
And he's one of them guys, like he sold, when he sold out, he was like going to retire.
Right.
Right. He's 42. He's like, I don't need, I've got enough money now that I'm good. Right. So when he met me, he was like, man, you kind of like brought new life into me. And he's really let me run with it, right? Like to be as creative as I can be. And I'm the one that's got the content people in-house now. And we've got these packages we put together now. And it's just, he's let me really step into to just grow this thing and envision what I want it to be. And he supported the back end with, the capital. And obviously, he's a extremely smart individual as well. So him and I have a good like yin and yang to each other too. So that's, that piece of it has shown me what the brand can do for your business, right? You got a lot of guys that kind of stay in the background and they grow businesses, and that's a really great thing. But with today and social media, as bad as some people don't want to do it and want to evolve with it, like you're just being stubborn by not doing that. Because if I can create Michael McGovern as the brand, then everything I touch is going to be successful.
Right, correct. So the podcast started with you. And then it's almost, the way I look at it is kind of an example of, all right, I buy a car and I want to drive and own a fancy car, but I don't want to have to pay for it. So when I'm driving it, I pay for it, but if I'm not, then I touro it out, right? So you started a podcast, like, all right, well, they got this whole space here. Well, let's build a business around this asset that we already have
100%.
that we're utilizing.
Yep. And I mean, because the thing is, people would come in and the first thing they would say is like, dang, I didn't realize, like we've got cameras and chairs and, we got a like sign in the back. Like they didn't realize what we had when they would come in to record with me. And so that just kept being kind of happening time and time again. And him and I are looking at it like, well, we've got overhead, right? We're still we're still paying to do all of this. So why not try to make money off of it? And so the brick and mortar side to it is one side. The other side is being able to have, because that's only so scalable too, right? And so the other side of it is we actually have a deal with Sweetwater that we're working on, and being able. Beer? No, they have like electronic stuff, right? They produce podcasts and things like that, equipment. And so what we're working on with them is basically being able to send a kit out to anybody that wants to start their own podcast. Right. And so
yeah.
now, and what we'll do is they can send us the stems. Like we will give them the step, like coach them on it.
Right.
Right. Like, all right, you sign up with us. It'll be X amount a month. It'll be X amount of a sign up fee. And then if you don't have the equipment, here's our link to go ahead and buy the equipment. And then we'll onboard you. And then from there, it's like helping to build the brand a little bit, getting the names of it, the bios, what's the podcast going to look like. And then being able to, work a deal out as well where you'll pay a few months in advance, like a 3-month deposit to be able to schedule you, set you up, and then really help you scale out. And so that's kind of that's the model to really go wide, because the brick and mortar being there is great, but you're only gonna, that's high ticket.
Yeah.
Right. You're talking $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month just to be able to come in there and record, but you're getting a ton of value out of it.
Yeah.
People like you and me see the value because we're spending it either way. Right. And so if you can just walk into a place where you can stay in your genius and do the thing that you know is best for you, and then walk back out, and then everything's done for you. Yeah. That's worth it.
Yeah, I'm actually doing it next week. I'm flying into Dallas for Christine, and it's a whole production, like I'm on the news or whatnot, and it's $20,000. But that $20,000 is going to turn into hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'm going to be there for 2 hours shooting a 30-minute interview, and we can splice that up so many different ways and monetize it so many different ways. It's going to turn into multiple 6, if not 7 figures.
Yes, and I think that's the hard part with evolving as a business owner too, right? That I have had a lot of friction with personally. Is where you're at now, you're going and doing things like that where you're spending money on it and you're not seeing the monetary value out the gate. When you're a sales guy, or when I'm selling a roof, I can sell a roof and I know I impacted my business today. Yeah. Me coming here and recording this podcast isn't impacting my business today. Right. But it's going to impact it 6 months from now. Right. Right. And so it's being able to see it from that light too. And because I think for me, at least, it's like this tension that I play in, and like, oh man, am I doing the right things? Is being here the right thing? Or should I go be selling? Do I need to be in the field with my guys? Or is it good to be coming here and building out things that are going to help me grow down the road versus where I am now? Yeah. What was it that we talked about a couple weeks ago? It was talking about instant gratification versus delayed gratification, where instant gratification you will suffer if you are constantly after instant gratification, where if you can pan back and understand the true fruits of your labor with delayed gratification, there's far more reward in delayed gratification versus, there's a fancier saying than what I just said, so it makes it sound a lot better. So I also noticed that you're single. Now, I didn't notice for myself, but I do have I actually got about a dozen sister-in-laws roughly your age that are single as well. There's one that's dating somebody, and he just won't step up and put a ring on her finger, so she's available too. I'm trying to get to, I told you I'm trying to get south,
I just wanted to put it out there. Mac here is single and rich.
Getting there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being on today. You brought tons of value. Thanks for coming in and hanging out with us for an entire day and hanging out tonight. I'm looking forward to, I hope this can be something that becomes more consistent. Yeah. I really enjoy you guys, man. Your hospitality is incredible. Every time you and I have ever got to connect, it's been awesome. And then obviously the opportunities we have ahead of us is awesome, man. So I really appreciate you. Cool. Awesome. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.